When I was a kid growing up in Florida, I could walk along the lake shore at my home for hours at a time, casting my fishing lure into the water in hopes of landing a big old bass. And I was so good at it that I could fish all summer long and not catch a single thing. Well, I could pull out some weeds or maybe the occasional stick. I might even catch a cypress tree every now and then on a big cast and have to break my line and leave the lure up at the tree branch. But fish, honestly, there were some summers without a single catch. And to make matters worse, my brother Ken was a master with the rod and reel. He would come out and stand beside me, throw his lure in the water, and in about a minute and a half say, "Got one!" And he'd pull out this beautiful bass and parade around triumphantly with his trophy and return it to the water. And obviously it made an impact on me. I still haven't forgotten my dry spell as a young fisherman. I mean, what was wrong with me? What did I ever do to make the fish gods angry? So when Jesus tells Peter to head out into deep water and cast his nets after a long night of fishing without catching a thing, I completely understand his reluctance. Sometimes you just don't feel like you're good enough. Maybe you're not worthy. You're disappointed, a little hopeless. Maybe it's better just to give up, at least for a little while. Of course, when Peter finally does what Jesus tells him to do, and he tosses his unlucky nets into the water, he brings in a miraculous load of fish from a single toss. He needed more than one boat just to bring them all to shore. And when Peter returns to Jesus, he knows he's not worthy. It isn't Peter who's responsible for that catch. "Go away from me, Lord," he says. "I'm a sinful man." So imagine Peter's surprise when Jesus basically says, "Okay, Peter, that's enough fish for you. You're ready to start catching people." What? If Peter feels unworthy just pulling in some fish at his Lord's command, how can he possibly feel qualified about reaching out to people for Jesus' sake? Don't be afraid, Jesus tells him. Apparently, Peter is not so sinful or so unqualified that there isn't work for him to do, sharing and caring for people at Jesus' call. You know, all three of our scriptures today tell stories of people who see themselves as unworthy in the eyes of God to do anything worthwhile in faith. "Woe is me," cries Isaiah when he finds himself in the presence of God's holy angels. "I am lost. I'm a man of unclean lips." But that doesn't stop God from putting aside Isaiah's guilt and telling him to get in the game and to get out there and call his people back to faith. And when Paul meets the risen Jesus, Paul's out there trying to kill off the church. And he knows himself to be, and I quote, "the least of the apostles, unfit to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God." But that doesn't stop God from calling Paul to dedicate his life entirely to building up the church, to building that dream of God, of a community of faith that's open to all people. You know, I gather that everybody goes through those barren seasons of faith, those times of uncertainty or anxiety in life, wondering what it's all about, what good we're doing here, what difference we can make for good when there's so much evil in the world. I'm out there fishing, Lord. I'm not bringing up anything. Maybe we aren't good enough at all this faith stuff. Maybe we can't make a difference in all the suffering in the world. Maybe we just don't have the time with everything we have to do. Maybe we're just not all that worthy to help others. But if there's one thing all of these Bible stories tell me today, it's that it isn't our worthiness that convinces God to call us to serve the world in faith. It isn't our credentials, or our past actions for good or ill, or our abundance of free time, or our vast knowledge of the scriptures, or our personal strength of character. I believe God calls us to serve because God sees something in us to put to use. Because God loves us and loves this world and gives us the purpose to love it too. God calls us because we're needed. It's like the prayer of St. Francis, where there's hate, let us sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Sounds like a job description. And as the prophet Isaiah and the apostle Paul and even impetuous Peter attest, God gives them what we need. God gives us what we need to undertake whatever work is before us in our time, in our trials, in our circumstances, whatever they may be. Of course, we might try to demur behind a sense of our unworthiness or our insecurity or our uncertainty. I mean, who are we to think that we could ever make a difference? You know what I believe to be the real risk that Jesus takes on that day with Peter and the others along the shores of that lake in Galilee? Peter could have just said, "No, Jesus, we're a tired bunch of fishermen entirely down on our luck. We give up. We're not able. No, we won't be going back out today." And that which God had planned for Peter and the others that day, to call ordinary people to become the faithful foundation of Christ's church, that work would have been thwarted, at least for a time, not by Peter's unworthiness, but by his unwillingness. I've already told you I didn't grow up much the fisherman, but I have not given up, neither out there on the lake nor out there in day-to-day life. There's something that every fisherman and fisherwoman comes to understand, and maybe we can translate this into our lives of faith. I'm going to try. Without the nets in the water, you surely will not catch any fish. And if we're not using our lives to cast the nets of love and care and welcome for others, we will surely never bring them into this community of hope that Jesus began to build so long ago along a lakeshore. And while our fishing may be fallow at times, in Jesus' time, we know this, that a catch is always possible on the very next cast. So thank you for staying the course, St. Stephen's Church. Do not be afraid. Just get your nets out there in the water.